Hi cruise fans, I hope you're having an amazing day. My name's Grant and welcome to my channel Cruise with Grant, where we talk about all things Norwegian Cruise Lines. In today's video, we're going to discuss the top things that you need to know about COVID-19 protocols before you get on board your next Norwegian cruise. This will help to make sure that you know what to expect, but also that you can avoid headaches at the pier when preparing to board. So without any further ado, let's go. Before we get started, it probably goes without saying, make sure that you check the Norwegian Cruise Line website often. Things are changing and you don't want to be ready to relax only to find out that you haven't met some of the most recent requirements. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing a bit about my experience taking a Norwegian cruise in December 2021, but I'll also be talking about some of the more recent changes that Norwegian has announced to their pre-cruise protocols that you need to know about to be ready for a fantastic vacation. Let's start off by talking about vaccination requirements. Norwegian requires that all guests and crew are fully vaccinated. As of January 2022, fully vaccinated means that you've received 2 doses of a recognized vaccine at least 2 weeks prior to sailing. Now, as you probably know, many countries are starting to encourage booster shots in response to the new Omicron variant. So this definition might change and is one of the things you'll want to keep an eye on the Norwegian website. If you want to confirm that Norwegian will recognize your vaccine, you can check their website where you'll find a list of some of the most commonly accepted vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna, but also links to the World Health Organization, the US Food and Drug Administration, and the EU Agence Médecine, where you can find a full list of both single and double dose vaccines that will be accepted. On this page, you'll also find lists of vaccines that are not accepted by Norwegian, including things like Sputnik 5. If you're like me and you're traveling from a country like Canada, you may have questions about mixed doses of vaccines. That's where you may have received 1 dose of something like Pfizer and then another dose of something like Moderna. Early on in the pandemic, there was a lot of confusion and debate about whether people who had mixed doses would be allowed to go on cruises. But the cruise lines got together, thankfully, and asked the Center for Disease Control in the US to really be clear on their advice about mixed vaccines. So I am happy to say that people with mixed doses can take part on cruises, and they can embark and disembark both in the US and in countries abroad. The only thing that differs if you have mixed doses of vaccines is that you have to have completed your second dose 17 days prior to embarking. So it's a little bit longer than the 2 weeks if you had a single brand vaccination. The other thing to note is that the Norwegian website is very clear that they only accept mixed doses of mRNA vaccines. So if you've had, for example, Pfizer and 1 shot of Pfizer or 1 shot of Moderna and then a shot of AstraZeneca, that's still not being accepted. So it's only where you have 2 mRNA vaccines. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you can check the Norwegian website for information about which vaccines are recognized. So how are you going to be asked to provide proof of your vaccination? So the first change that you're going to notice up front when you're logging in online before you get on board is that there is a question that will ask you to confirm that you have been fully vaccinated. At this point in time, you're not going to be asked to upload any documentation. It's just a declaration. It's when you get to the pier that you're going to be asked to provide your proof of vaccination documents. And Norwegian recommends either bringing a printed copy, which shows both doses that you've received, which vaccines, and the dates. You can also bring an electronic copy on your phone if that's something that works well for you. And Norwegian says they'll even accept a photograph of your documents. The one thing that they've said they will not accept is things like receipts or confirmations of appointments for vaccines. So you can't have something that says you're going to be vaccinated. You need to make sure you have something that says you already have been vaccinated. In my case, we brought paper copies. Even though the lines weren't very long at the pier, they were actually much shorter than usual. The paper copies still made the process go a lot more smoothly. So I definitely recommend, even if you're planning to have an electronic version, bring a paper copy as a backup just in case, because it may help you move a little bit more quickly when you're checking in at the pier. So now let's talk a little bit more about some of the pre-boarding COVID-19 testing requirements. And spoiler alert, this is one of the areas where Norwegian is looking to make some big changes over the next couple of months. Back in December, when I took my cruise, or I was planning to take my cruise, one of the things that I was really stressing about was having to arrange for all of the different COVID-19 tests. A test to be able to get into Italy, which was the country we were departing from, a test to get on board the cruise ship, and then having to get a PCR test, which was the requirement for me to come back to Canada. And so one of the things that really was like a deal breaker with Norwegian, they went way above and beyond, was that they were coordinating most of the testing. That what made it possible for me to take this vacation. So I only had to arrange for the antigen test to get into Italy, and the Norwegian Cruise Lines coordinated all of the antigen testing at the pier. And then on board the ship, they did the PCR tests and provided the results that I needed to get back into Canada. So that was an amazing experience. The big change that you need to know about is that Norwegian's no longer going to be providing free antigen testing at the port area. So passengers are going to be required to provide their own proof of a negative antigen test in order to board. If you're leaving from a US port, you're going to have completed your test 2 days prior to boarding, whereas you've got a little bit more flexibility if you're leaving from an international port. You can take your test up to 3 days in advance. So what does this mean for you? It means that there's some additional costs that you're going to have to think about in terms of planning. But also, if you're like me, I like to arrive a few days in advance before taking any cruises. So depending on how far in advance you're arriving in the departure port, you may have to think about coordinating another antigen test. So again, just some more planning and additional costs that you should be thinking about. So we've talked about vaccination requirements and we've talked about COVID-19 testing. What else do you need to be thinking about before you're getting ready for your cruise? Now, one of the things that's probably already pretty familiar to most people is online check-in. So a few weeks before the cruise, you're going to be asked to go and check in online. And the check-in is going to look a little bit different this time. And most of the changes that Norwegian has introduced are about finding ways to gather more information from you up front and help to avoid having large groups of people in really long lines at the pier. So hopefully this is something that you're going to be cheering for, like me, because it was really nice to have the fastest check-in I've ever had because I did a little bit more online. The first main change that you're going to notice is that rather than having your photo taken at the pier using the little webcam, they are going to ask you to submit a photo online. So this can be a picture that you've taken with your webcam, one that you've got on your phone already, but think about having a picture ready that you're comfortable with uploading, and this will be the photo that they use for security purposes on board to verify who you are when you're getting on and off board the ship. Like many things, just please remember, don't choose a photo that has sunglasses or where you're wearing a hat, and you'll see similar kinds of tips and photo suggestions on the online check-in form. The second big change that you'll notice online is that there's now a mandatory safety video. And for those of you who are wondering about what the safety video is about, it's replacing the muster drill. People have lots of feelings, I'm sure. Either you love it or you hate it. But for now, the muster drill is a thing of the past. We're going virtual. And so the safety video is meant to give you all of the same information that you would need to know to meet requirements and make sure that the cruise can take off. When I was doing the safety video, I did note it was a little bit wonky in terms of registering that I had completed the video. So you may want to make sure that you give it enough time to watch it all the way through and then give it a little bit more time to make sure that it fully is checking off that you've met that requirement. Before I wrap up this video, there was just a couple more things that I wanted to say about things that you can expect when you're going to check in at the pier. Like always, when you're doing your online check-in, you're going to be asked to choose a time that you want to arrive at the pier to start your embarkation process. This doesn't change with the current online check-in process, but I think that there is a little bit more emphasis on arriving in a particular window so that they can space people out. They don't want everybody arriving at the same time so that we can observe social distancing and make sure that we're maintaining health and safety for everyone. So that's just a thing to keep in mind. Obviously, if you arrive a little bit early or a little bit late, you're not going to be turned away. When we arrived in Civitavecchia, because of our train and bus schedule, we ended up arriving, I think, about 30 minutes early, and we were able to check in with no problems. So it's good to stay sort of within the same window, but not to fret in case you run into any transportation difficulties, for example. The other thing just to note is when you check in with your e-docs in hand, so that obviously makes the line go a lot faster if you have downloaded your documents from your online check-in with all of your reservation details, is when you get to the desk, they will ask to take your temperature. So nothing invasive, don't worry, but they will use a forehead thermometer just to take your temperature as sort of the final step before you're allowed to go on board. And with that, the most stressful part of your vacation planning is over, and now you can just focus on having a relaxing and enjoyable vacation. Because if you're anything like me, it's probably been about 2 years since you've had a chance to go anywhere. So look forward to an amazing vacation. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you have, please remember to give it a like, as it really does help me out. Please also think about clicking the subscribe button and turning on notifications so you can get notified when I release another video about how to make the most of your Norwegian Cruise Line vacation. Thanks very much. I hope you had a good time with me today. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.